seguete, allá que en algo, algo.
Also, who is running there? I don't know. you. We're going to. President Museveni, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to welcome you all to the high-level seminar on enhancing economic resilience through broader South-South economic cooperation, co-hosted by UNCTAD, the Government of China, and the Government of Uganda. My name is Richard Kozel-Wright. I'm the Director of the Division on Globalization and Development Strategies at UNCTAD, and I'm honored to moderate this side event today. This year marks the 60th anniversary of UNCTAD and of the G77 and China. We will be celebrating our achievements in pushing for a multilateral system that is more development friendly than the one that we inherited from the post-war settlement among developed countries at the end of the Second World War, as well as our endurance in the face of difficult times. And we had some very difficult times in that past 60 years. But we will also be looking forward to how we can meet the new challenges we are facing together to build a better future for all people and the planet. And we heard from the presentations this morning in the plenary that we face a lot of challenges at the moment. Across those 6 decades, UNCTAD has always been a strong advocate of South-South economic cooperation and integration, including in the areas of trade, finance, direct investment, technology. In recent years, economic growth in the South and the progress on the SDGs has been disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and cascading crises, including those linked to a warming planet. Despite recovery from the worst days of the pandemic, growing financial stresses continue to threaten prospects across the developing world. In terms of building economic resilience and getting the SDGs back on track, South-South economic cooperation Though not a substitute for effective multilateral cooperation and coordination, it can make a significant difference. Indeed, we have witnessed a strong resurgence of South-South cooperation since the global financial crises, and it is important to build on that momentum, all the more so given the increase in unilateral actions that have been taken by many of our development partners in recent years, and the strong headwinds developing countries are currently facing in the global economy. Today, we are very happy to co-organize this high-level seminar with China and Uganda on the sidelines of the Third South Summit to discuss how to scale up South-South economic cooperation and integration. And to begin with, it's a pleasure. I'd like to invite Her Excellency Rebecca Greenspan to deliver a welcoming message on behalf of UNCTAD. Rebecca, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Richard. President Museveni, dear Excellency Miao Diuju, Assistant Foreign Minister of the People's Republic of China, Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, all protocol observed. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to today's seminar, co-hosted by UNCTAD, the Government of the People's Republic of China, and the Republic of Uganda. At the outset, please allow me to extend my congratulations to Uganda and to President Museveni for successfully hosting the 19th Summit of the NAM and also the Third South Summit, and to thank his team for the strong support to UNCTAD in organizing this side event. Really, congratulations to you, President Museveni. Great job, and very important for all of us. I also would like to express my appreciation to the Chinese government for not only co-hosting this side event, but also providing generous funding support through a technical cooperation project with UNCTAD. And that project has produced very valuable material to learn from the development process of China. We were discussing today, President and dear Miao, that one of the things of the rising of the Global South is that the recipes just don't work. We know that all countries have their own path to development, but we can learn from each other. And what this project has allowed us is to learn from the different paths to development and from the Chinese experience. So 2024, as was said, marks the 60th anniversary for both UNCTAD and the G77 in China, and we will organize a series of events for this celebration, of which I want to extend a very special invitation to President Museveni and to China to really join us, because it's this unique collaboration in the multilateral system what can really make a difference. In 1964, the first UN Conference on Trade and Development was held in Geneva, with the aim of examining the obstacles that developing countries, many of which had only recently gained their independence by then, were facing in building economies that could deliver on the hopes and aspirations of their populations. From the outset, UNCTAD insisted that the development challenge was as much an international as a domestic one, and that the rules and institutions established at the end of the Second World War to manage international economic relations would therefore need to undergo reforms to better reflect development aspirations. Since its inception, UNCTAD, working closely with the G77 in China, has been a champion of South-South economic cooperation and South-South cooperation at large. Much has changed during these 60 years, but if there is just one lesson to take from that history, is that progress has been made when the South has acted together to push for a fairer and better international system. And I really believe this is the time to do it again and push for a meaningful transformation. It is no coincidence that the growth of the Global South as an economic force accounts for 42% of all of the world's economic output today. And that took place in a context where South-South trade and South-South cooperation grew faster than North-North or South-North relations. And remarkably, most of this change has taken place in the last 30 years. Let me give you these numbers. In the late 19th century, North-North trade accounted for around 80% of all global trade. 100 years later, in the 90s, it accounted for around 60%. So in 100 years, it went down only 20 points. Today, barely a generation later, North-North trade only accounts for 25% of the world trade. So to say that the change has been tectonic is to sell it short. The Global South is now the most dynamic force in the world of trade for the first time since the advent of colonialism and industrialization. China's contribution to these outcomes has been key in the rise of the Global South and the restructuring of trade. But also, it has become an important actor in the cooperation space, where the Belt and Road and the GDI stand out. Now, Africa is also playing a central role with the African Continental Free Trade Area that represents a huge opportunity to bring the continent to a new level in the international context. The implication of this transformation for global governance, for the future of multilateralism, and for the dynamics of sustainable development are immense. With the growth of the Global South and the rise of South-South trade, South-South cooperation will play an increasingly important role, a role we must do more to understand, to shape, and to support. The centrality of South-South cooperation is more important than ever. The world economy finds itself, as was said by Richard, in uncharted waters. We have said that we are living through cascading crises. The pandemic, that doesn't seem completely over, high indebtedness. The number that we give here is that today, dear President, 3.3 billion people live in countries that pay more in servicing the debt than the resources they give to education or health. 3.3 billion people. So indebtedness, slowing growth, recurring climate disasters, geopolitical trade disruptions, and growing war and human conflict. These challenges are fostering economic fragmentation and threatening the integrity of the multilateral system. The Global South voice and South-South cooperation is key to build collective self-resilience, promote more sustainable and equitable economic growth, and strengthen multilateralism. Over the decades, developing economies have consolidated their ties, including growing financial cooperation and foreign direct investment between them. This has built on the opportunities and synergies that knowledge sharing and best practices bring. But there is more work to be done to move towards more integrated strategic frameworks that address also crucial aspects like technology transfer, environmental sustainability, and social development. Our cooperation should also be about building skills, communities, and sustainable companies to diversify our economies. Let me take this opportunity to acknowledge the efforts that were done by the G77 in China under here the leadership of Pedro Pedroso from Cuba, and of course of the UAE as the host of COP28 to successfully launch a loss and damage mechanism in Dubai last month. These cascading crises have set back progress on delivering the Agenda 2030 and the Paris Agreement, particularly in the Global South. The Summit of the Future, to be held at the General Assembly in September, will be a test of the willingness of development partners to make real strides in getting things back on track. A strong collective voice from the South will be critical to a meaningful outcome from the summit, as the Secretary General said today. The task is urgent, and UNCTAD was warning about the danger of a lost decade even before COVID-19 shock. And the Secretary General Guterres has since warned that, and I quote, "Unless we act now, the 2030 agenda will become an epitaph for a world that might have been." South-South has an historic mission in this context. Voice and cooperation should provide complementarity resources to traditional ODA. South should help mobilize domestic resources, contribute to crisis response, and strengthen productive capacities through substantive economic cooperation in the areas of trade, investment, technology, finance, and productive diversification. In this era of rapid technological advancement, South-South cooperation is uniquely positioned to foster also digital innovation by sharing knowledge and resources in the field of digital technology. Countries of the Global South can leapfrog traditional stages of development, creating a more inclusive digital economy. Here lies the beauty of South-South cooperation. As I said in a panel on Saturday, if a country wants to learn about digital-led development, it has much more to learn from a country in the South, which has leapfrogged in the area in the last decade. If we really want to meet the SDGs in this decade of action, the only option we have is to leapfrog our way to 2030. But to learn how to leap, it is better to ask the frog. All the frogs are in the Global South. So, Your Excellencies, the expanded economy of the South and dynamic economic cooperation have gradually but significantly changed the international economic landscape, which has helped further build the greater confidence and solidarity of the Global South in international affairs. We've seen increasing South-led initiatives such as the expanded BRICS, New Development Financing Initiative, regional trade and investment agreements, climate cooperation. Through these concrete initiatives, the Global South is contributing to build a more inclusive global economic governance, which will be a key factor of success no matter how much and how well we do South-South cooperation. Neither the South nor the North alone can solve the great problems of our times. We have to partner and we have to cooperate. Excellencies, colleagues, UNCTAD was born with the interest of the South in our DNA. This high-level seminar demonstrates our strong commitment to building on that history in support of sustainable and inclusive development. I look forward to today's discussion, which we trust will contribute to the wider thinking that is urgently needed to build a more development-friendly multilateralism, with development at its center. I thank you. Wibali Inio? Is that, yeah? Understandable? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, for those important messages. And the next keynote speaker is His Excellency Miao Deu, Assistant Foreign Minister of the People's Republic of China. You have the floor.
Your Excellency Yoweri Museveni, President of Uganda, Ms. Rebecca Greenspan, Secretary General of UNCTAD, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to attend this side event on the occasion of the third South Summit, and also, I think, as the moderator just now said, on the occasion of the 60th anniversary of the founding of the UNCTAD and the G77 and China. Both are two important occasions. China, UNCTAD, and the Uganda government are co-hosting this event. Our aim is to pool wisdom in discussing ways of promoting development and deepening cooperation. As Rebecca said, we were discussing before the opening that development is the common goal, is the common aspiration. But how to reach development, how to realize modernization, there is different formulas. There is no truth that only one formula works. So today's opportunity provides a very good, useful platform for people to discuss how you can combine your own national context and your desire to reach development goals and to realize modernization in its full sense. To promote the Global Development Initiative, which was proposed by President Xi Jinping of China, the Chinese government has joined hands with UNCTAD and the Barbados government in carrying out the project for post-pandemic sustainable development and recovery. This successful triangular or tripartite project is a vivid example of the international community's efforts to deepen development cooperation and promote sustainable development. This year, as we said, marks the 60th anniversary of the G77 and UNCTAD. It was exactly on the first UNCTAD that 77 developing countries issued a joint declaration articulating a whole set of positions on international economic relations, trade and development, and proclaiming the birth of the G77. Over the 6 decades, UNCTAD has been promoting the dialogue between the North and the South, fostering South-South cooperation and making contributions to the cause of global development. And UNCTAD, I think, is reputed as a think tank of the South cooperation. It deserves our gratitude and deserves our respect. Now we are standing at a new starting point of history. I am confident that under the able leadership of Secretary General Greenspan and with the hard efforts of all the colleagues, UNCTAD will make fresh contributions to promoting global development and the modernization of the South. At present, ladies and gentlemen, we think that great transformations unseen in a century are accelerating and having deep impacts on each nation. The world economy is in doldrums, global development is facing headwinds, and the implementation of the 2030 Agenda is encountering severe challenges. The international community's call for fairness and justice has become louder, as we have heard during the past several days' summit. And the aspirations of all peoples for development cooperation have become stronger. Against this backdrop, the Global Development Initiative, the GDI, has gained strong support from more than 100 countries and international organizations, including the UN. With the concerted efforts of all parties, GDI's concept has been continuously enriched. Its mechanisms are gradually maturing. Its path has become clearer, and its practical cooperation are benefiting many countries of the South. As I discussed with Rebecca, GDI is not something of only a policy manifestation. It is something of action. It is action-oriented. We have no other self-interest in pushing for this initiative. It is a public product offered by the Chinese government to the world for development. The GDI has revitalized the global development agenda China has held a number of high-level events, including the high-level dialogue on global development and the ministerial meeting of the Group of Friends of the GDI, which effectively fostered an international consensus on prioritizing development, promoted the return of global development to the right track, fostered synergy, and injected impetus into the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. The GDI has mobilized resources for common development, and the GDI, $4 billion Global Development and the South-South Cooperation Fund, has supported UN entities in implementing dozens of livelihood projects in nearly 20 developing countries. The China UN Peace and Development Fund and Phase 3 of China FAO South-South Cooperation Trust Fund have boosted development in dozens of developing countries. China also promoted financing from multilateral financial institutions, including the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, the AIIB, and mobilized development resources from all parties. Going forward, GDI will further integrate global development resources, optimize their allocation, and help to bridge the gap in global financing for development. The GDI has developed wide networks of cooperation. China has signed memorandums of understanding on international development cooperation with a number of countries, regions, and international organizations, promoted a global development promotion center network and a global knowledge network for development, and endeavored to achieve more resilient, as today's topic just implies, more resilient global development. Also under GDI, China has launched a food production enhancement action, fostered a global clean energy cooperation partnership, set up an international NGOs network for poverty reduction cooperation, and established the China Pacific Island Countries Climate Action Cooperation Center. China has held over 1,000 capacity building training programs, covering more than 40,000 people from the countries of the South. South-South cooperation is a great innovative endeavor of the South for strength through unity. As the largest developing country and a natural member of the Global South, China has always worked with the South countries to uphold international justice and equity, and defend our common rights and interests in development, setting up a shining example of equality and sincere mutual assistance among the countries of the South, and blazing a broad path towards common development. Last month, China held the Central Conference on Work Relating to Foreign Affairs. This meeting is quite important, of quite relevance here, because the meeting has clearly pointed out that building a community with a shared future for mankind is the noble goal pursued by China in conducting major country diplomacy with Chinese characteristics for the new era. And China calls for an equal and orderly multipolar world. We oppose hegemonism and power politics and work with concrete actions to advance democratization for international relations. China also calls for universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization, opposes unilateralism and protectionism, and firmly promotes trade and investment liberalization and facilitation. We will always be a strong, firm advocate, holder of multilateral trade system. China shares with the vast majority of the South a common history of seeking national independence. Our goals of achieving development and revitalization are the same. We have long forged an unbreakable and profound friendship. China will continue to firmly empathize with, stand with, and work with countries of the South. We will continue to join hands with you in promoting high-quality Belt and Road cooperation and implementing the Global Development Initiative, also the Global Security Initiative and the Global Civilization Initiative, to upscale international development cooperation and accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for a brighter future of peace, security, prosperity, and progress. Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister Dayu, for those comments. And I would like just personally to thank the government of China for the cooperation that you've extended to us. It's been a very important part of the work that we do on South-South cooperation as well. Finally, it's a great honor for us to invite His Excellency Mr. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, President of the Republic of Uganda, to deliver a keynote address to this side event. Thank you.
The Minister from China, the Secretary General of UNCTAD, and all the big persons who are here. This is not a keynote address. This is just some remarks. The slogan of yesterday, of NAM, when we had NAM, was global affluence, deepening cooperation in order to achieve global affluence. The slogan for today was leaving nobody behind, which means really we are talking about the same thing. Leaving nobody behind is the same as everybody being affluent. I thought about this, the affluent part, when they asked me about NAM. I remember that up to 1980, only a small part of the world was affluent. This was Western Europe, North America, and Japan. The rest of the world were in poverty. But the situation has now changed a bit. China has become affluent, and some other countries have graduated from poverty to affluence, although many are still poor. Therefore, our mission should be to ensure that everybody gets out of poverty. Now, we have been having problems of thinking how to organize society and ensure what we are talking about. How do you organize society to achieve affluence in each country and eventually everywhere, and leave nobody behind? Since the time of Renaissance, I like to look at man for the whole journey of 4.5 million years, because people behave as if the world has started today. I really pity some people when I hear them talking. These people, do they know that we have been here for 4.5 million years? They come and talk authoritatively. We we have been here for 4.5 million years, and we have been seeing things. So some modesty is good. To talk, but in a modest way, in a humble way. 4.5 million years is a long time. We can look at the last 500 years, since the time of the Renaissance. Different economic ideas. This morning I was mentioning some of them. Was it this morning or yesterday? One idea was bullionism. Some people thought that if you have got gold and silver, you are a rich country. Some of the countries like Portugal and Spain excelled in that. They went to Latin America, killed all the Red Indians, stole all the gold and the silver, and they ended up being the most backward countries in Europe. So that meant that bullionism could not work. It was a wrong way of looking for wealth. Then in France, there were people called physiocrats. These are people who believed that agriculture was the source of value. But those ones also turned out not to be very correct. Then, 1776, you had this Scotsman, Adam Smith, who comes and says, where does the source of wealth come from? And he wrote a book with that title, The Source of the Wealth of Nations. And he was more accurate because he said, if you give people freedom of enterprise and they specialize in what they can do best, and then they exchange, you will create wealth more easily, which was really a breakthrough. Because the example he gave, you see, look at me. I've just had breakfast. And in breakfast, I ate bread, but I'm not the one who made the bread. Somebody made the bread. Another one, a butcher, slaughtered beef. That's when I knew that English should drink alcohol at breakfast. That a brewer had also brewed beer for him. So on. So these people, they were doing all this for my breakfast. Is it because they loved me? The answer was no. They loved themselves, but in the process they helped me. So this was a breakthrough in economic thinking. And some people, it helped. Then Karl Marx comes and says, private property is the source of all evil. We better do central planning. Karl Marx was also right, to some extent, as you will see later, but he had some problem of not understanding the role of private initiative, of free enterprise. He overlooked that. So then, with that thinking, things appear to be moving. Some of the Western countries expanded, Industrial Revolution. Then, in 1929, the whole capitalist system collapses. This is the time of the Great Depression. What was the problem? when Adam Smith helped those people who were there at that time to know what can create energy in the economy, to know that free enterprise can create energy in the economy, he forgot the issue of aggregated demand. When you produce a good or a service, who buys it? The market. And here we were helped by a man called Maynard Keynes, who said, by the way, it's better to give somebody a job to dig a hole, plant nothing there, fill it again, and pay him. Because if you pay him, he will go and buy the goods in the shops, which have no buyers. So economic thinking has been, and here, of course, the line of Adam Smith was being somehow moderated by saying that, yes, private enterprise is good, but you need some coordination, some state intervention to help the private sector move well. So we have all these experiences. And this is where I want to blame vested interests in the world. They are the ones blocking progress. Vested, parasitic interests. Because these thinkers have really helped us to see what should be done. Free enterprise, some government intervention to help the free enterprise work well, and exchange and trade. But some groups don't understand this. Now the question I always ask them, when I went to the UN, I asked them, I said, who would lose if there was global affluence? If I put it in our local language, it's much better. But in English, I try my best. Urukferwa noha abantu bana twabaki. Who would lose if there was global affluence? I don't know. Maybe you can, the Secretary General can answer that sometime later. Who are the potential victims of global affluence? Why do you want to preserve poverty? I don't know how many poor people we have now in the world. They are what percent? How many? 800 million. 800 million. Very poor ones. And those moderately poor? The ones moderately poor, not 800 million are absolutely poor.
Yeah, and 40% of the world.
So, who would lose if we had global affluence? For me, I think everybody would gain, and gain even more, in my opinion. What evidence do I have? When China got out of poverty, in fact, not when it was getting out of poverty, when they were having big construction projects inside China, the prices of raw materials went up. Some years ago, we were trying to build steel factories in Uganda. And we were told, no, don't bother with steel. Steel has got a glut. There's a glut of steel in the world. Nobody will invest in steel. And indeed, at that time, the price of steel was $200 a ton. But when there was big construction in China, the price of steel went from $200 a ton to $900 per ton. The price of, in the 1970s, there was a high price of copper. I don't know why. And countries like Zambia were very prosperous. The kwacha of Zambia was very strong. To buy one kwacha, you needed $3 US dollars, because the price of copper was very high. I don't know why it was very high at that time. Then the price of copper collapsed. And we were told that the price of copper had collapsed because there was some story there that aircraft industries were no longer using cables to manipulate the plane, that they were now using the digital or something like that. That's why the price of copper had collapsed. But when China was expanding, the price of copper went up. I think even the price of cobalt went up. Cement, price of cement went up. So while transformation was going in China, in other parts of the world, we were benefiting from that growth in China. Now, therefore, this shows that if there is growth, many people, in one country, two countries, three countries, many people will benefit. Protectionism is a killer of opportunities and a distorter of economies. What examples do I have? In 1955, before many of you were born, or even your parents were born, I was already trying to learn about the world. And I was in primary 3, in grade 3, in a place called Chamate. Chamate is very far from here. And in Chamate, I was told that Argentina is a very rich country. It is the biggest producer of beef in the world. Where do they produce the beef? I had even to know for my geography lesson. I had even to know where the cows were in Argentina. That there is a place called Pampas, that beef is reared in the Pampas. Pampas, I don't know what it means, whether it is a flat land or a hill, or I don't know. But to pass my examinations, I had to repeat it. So, cows are in the Pampas in Argentina. Now, and by 1910, later on when I progressed more in the school system, I checked, and I found that Argentina was the 10th richest country in 1900. Now, you know what is happening in Argentina. Argentina is, I think, a basket case. What could have gone wrong with Argentina? I think we are lucky to have the Secretary General here. So if you are in a hospital, you don't have to worry about health issues. So therefore, I think the Secretary General will be able to tell us what happened to Argentina. But in my thinking, I think the problems of Argentina started with the European Union. When the European Union was created, and they formed that protection, because I think this beef of Argentina was going to Europe. That's what I think. I have never asked any economists. They are all here. This is just my own homestead economics. But I was thinking, because I remember what you people, you call history, I call current affairs. I was there just watching. When the European Union was formed, they formed a cartel. And they started promoting artificial beef, beef which is not competitive, where somebody is paid to breed cows and is given money, allowances. The one who can rear cows economically is shut out. I think this was the beginning of the problems of Argentina. You can help me to say no or yes. And I think other victims of that European protectionism were Australia, actually, because even Australia was somehow in agriculture exporting to UK, I think, but they were also shut out. But for them, they managed somehow to maneuver. So therefore, now what happened? You had artificial economy in European Union, farmers being bribed with subsidies, with what? To block out, to block out efficient beef producers like the ones like me. Me, I can produce beef very cheaply for those people. Much better beef than what they eat there. But I am shut out. But for me, I'm not so desperate because I've got these Africans. They solve my problem. They eat the beef. But if I was Argentina, I think it would be a problem. So therefore, this protectionism is a distorter of the economy of the world and a killer of opportunities. Now, therefore, I am a bit out of touch. There used to be the concept of comparative advantage. We used to study it in the university, that comparative advantage. What happened to that concept? What happened? That if I have a comparative advantage in producing something, I should be allowed to do it and then I sell. Now, a country like Uganda, which has got many comparative advantages, would benefit from that comparative advantage because now Uganda has one of the lowest inflation rates in the world, 2.3%. In other parts of the world, I hear they are crying. And we still have the problem of imported inflation through fuel. But soon we are going to get rid of that one also. We're going to have our own petroleum products here. Of course, they will have to be sold at market price, but minus transport costs, minus the Red Sea, the war, Yemen, Houthis, what, America, minus all those distorters, minus Corona will not affect us. So I think we are going to be in a good situation. But why is our inflation low? Because we produce food cheaply, low-cost producers of food and other raw materials. So what happened to this I didn't come to give a keynote address because that means that I am sure of everything. I just came to make some remarks and provoke you into thinking. What happened, when was the concept of comparative advantage forgotten about? What happened? Is it still taught in universities or what? What are they teaching now? They are teaching protectionism and what are they teaching in the universities now about the economy? Now, if we really go for free trade, and it's amazing because in the past it was UK which was for free trade. In the past, in the UK was for free trade, but now I think they also went into protectionism. But if we accept the strategy of free trade, the legitimate issue to consider are transitional safeguard measures for latecomers. Because I may potentially have comparative advantage in something, but there are some temporary bottlenecks that don't allow me to realize my potential. So it is in order, if you don't want to be unfair, to allow for some transitional time as I solve the bottlenecks so that I level the playing field. I should be allowed some protection so that which is time bound after I have sorted out my bottlenecks of transport, for instance. Like here, we are still using road transport to go to the ocean with cargo to Mombasa or to Dar es Salaam, 1,000 miles to 1,000 something miles. The best way to transport is by train and by water. This is the least costly way. These are the least costly ways. So as we are shifting from road transport to rail transport and water transport, we could be given time to, in this international arrangement of free trade, in my view. So what can the world do? What can we, the G77, do? The NAM, because for us we are like-minded people. We are people who are mainly former victims of unfair practices, who are now asserting ourselves. The figure you are quoting of 42% of GDP being with us is just a small figure. In a very short time, Uganda's economy will grow by 10 times because the potential is there and the infrastructure is there. So when you say the transformation is, we have seen what has happened in China. In a very short time, it has become an economy of trillions of dollars because the potential was there, but it was not utilized. The potential was there, the market was there, the ports of China were there, some of the raw materials were there, the human resource was there, but it was not being used. This is the same problem here. Once we start using it, like for instance Africa, the main problem is that we are producing but exporting raw materials. Now, if we stop exporting raw materials, even if we maintain the present levels, and we transform the raw materials like coffee. We export coffee. The South, Argentina, not Argentina, Brazil, Africa, Vietnam, Indonesia, we export, we are the growers of coffee. But from the total business value of coffee in the world of $460 billion, all of us, we earn only $25 billion. 460 billion, all the coffee growing countries earn only 25 billion. And Africa earns only 2.5 billion. And $900 million is for Uganda, because Uganda produces a big amount of coffee. So if we only added value to coffee, if we had an agreement to export processed coffee rather than unprocessed coffee, that sector would go up almost by 10 times in value. So therefore, the expansion, that 40% you are talking about is temporary. It will soon be overtaken by expanded production, quantitative and qualitative change. Now, in order to achieve that, as I said yesterday in NAM, I look at 3 areas. How to produce goods and services for sale, for the market. How we can cooperate in that. And there are many examples of cooperation, like the Chinese companies have come here and invested in so many areas to produce goods and services. We had some Indonesians who came and started producing palm oil in the islands. And now we are a bit we have been able to import substitute for tallow. Tallow is the raw material for making soap from the investments of the Indonesians. So therefore, these NAM countries, G77 countries, who have capacity to invest in sister countries, will produce the goods and the services from the local raw materials. That will be, that one is already happening. It's just a question of for instance, one Chinese company came and started producing ceramic tiles. You can imagine ceramic tiles were being imported, I don't know from where. Now they are making them here. And Uganda was spending, I think, $40 million on those ceramic tiles. That money is now saved. And of course the region also was squandering a lot of money. And there are so many other examples. So the NAM countries, the group of 77 countries can do that cross-border investment, and it would help. Now, once you produce a good or a service, the next issue is who buys it. Who buys? The story of Maynard Keynes, who buys what you produce. That's why we should, here in Africa, we are conscious of this. And some of us who have been involved from the 1960s, we could not rest without addressing this. That's why when we had opportunity, we revived the East African community with Tanzania and Kenya. Now there are 8 countries in that community. Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, Congo, and recently Somalia. Because we can't produce without a market. The internal market of Uganda of 46 million people is not enough. It's not enough. We have COMESA, which is bigger, and now we have the African continental market. But how do we trade with others? Because in Africa we are definitely moving. We have sold our view, and people are beginning to understand it. In Europe, some of the integration was helped by business groups, like by 1870, Germany was not one country. It was 39 kingdoms. They were all German, but they had those small kings there. But in Prussia, there was a group called Junkers. They say, I don't know this European, they write it Junkers, but they say Junkers, that the pronunciation is Junkers. These were, I think, big landlords and producing, I don't know what, producing big products. And they had a problem of market. To go from Prussia to Saxony, you pay taxes. From Saxony to this one, you pay taxes. These are part of the people who formed the Pan-German movement of uniting the German kingdoms behind Bismarck when they had the war with France of 1870. Germany was united. France had been a kingdom for a long time, but again, they still had internal barriers of trade. And that was one of the reasons of the French Revolution. There was some internal tax to go from Burgundy to Brittany, pay tax, some issue there. But in the case of France, it was the bourgeoisie, the middle class, who were pushing this freedom of trade across the whole of France. In Germany, it was again some sort of middle class. Those Junkers, I don't know what sort of people they were who were pushing that. So even here, especially at the regional level, we need those business groups who understand the need for the bigger market to come in and help in the process. And I think they are beginning to come up. They're beginning to come up here in East Africa, in Uganda, because they were believing in the tribes, politics of identity. I am this tribe, I am this religion. Because they were not engaged in wealth creation. But now that they are engaged in wealth creation, they are beginning to understand the issue of the market. We have a surplus of milk. We are stuck with the milk. We don't know where to sell it. We have surplus of maize, sugar, industrial products, cement, steel. So the middle class here, we are telling, okay, you are talking about tribes and religion. Then the tribes buy the cement. That's another thing. But we have been talking about tribes. So the second issue is the issue of the market. Produce the goods and services, cooperate in producing the goods and services, cooperate on the side on the issue of the market. In Africa, we are moving well among ourselves, but beyond Africa, what do we do? We already have some arrangements with China. China allows some of our products to enter the Chinese market tax-free. and we are continuing to discuss with them that. How about the others? How about India? How about Turkey? How about Indonesia? How about the ASEAN countries? What is the arrangement? Then finally, you have the issue of the infrastructure, because you need the infrastructure to link the producer with the consumer. The road, the railway, the power station to produce the good easily. And again, here with China, we are doing good work with them. They have helped us to build two power stations of a total of about 900 megawatts of electricity, and some other projects. We are also talking about the standard gauge railway. So the three areas: invest, coordination on the invest, produce goods and services together. Number two, the issue of markets. And then finally, the issue of infrastructure to link the consumer with the producer. Now, finally, the issue of financing. We shall have to look for affordable finances to talk about it among us. The World Bank, Banco Mundial, and IMF, they are not serious people. They just support consumption. I have a governor here. He's the governor of the bank. He's here. IMF gives him money called import support. Can you imagine? They give him money to support imports. And that's a debt to my people. Support imports, not of capital goods, but of perfumes. What do you call these other dead people's hair? Alcohol, wines. Okay, I wouldn't mind if they gave, those who want to buy alcohol, but if they could give me first money for investment, and the other one was additional. So this is off the point. But also within our own countries, we need discipline. Because with the discipline, we have money here, but money is not properly prioritized. People are doing this, doing that, and these people know that when we prioritize, we actually do things. We actually do things. Like this conference center here, we built it with our money in a fairly short time. We've been able to build it. So that is also another angle, the angle of frugality, in order to invest in production so that we expand the base of the economy. Thank you very much. I wish you good luck.
President, thank you very much for those remarks.
No, thank you very much, President. You know, you are absolutely right that you forget about comparative advantage when it's not in your advantage. And part of what has happened precisely now with the industrial policy that you were talking about, that many of them are protectionist policies. And what we have been saying, and you are absolutely right, is that, you know, the rich countries are doing industrial policy with subsidies. But for us, in the developing countries, that we don't have the fiscal space to do industrial policy through subsidies is very difficult because we don't have the possibility to do that. So we need other instruments to do it. And we put the example of Indonesia, that with the nickel put the rule that you cannot export raw nickel. You will need to add value, yes? And they took that decision, and it really benefited their economy. But they were took to the WTO arbitration because it's against the rules of a treaty that was negotiated very long ago, that is TRIMS. And so through that treaty, you cannot put that rule. It's against the WTO rule of TRIMS. And what we say is then we need to change also, or to revise, rules that we created then that are not fit for purpose today. And if we will have a multilateral system based on universal standards and norms, it will be better than every country putting their own protectionist or their own rules. But the problem is that the developing countries don't have the rules working for them to be able to add value and to produce, to insert themselves in better supply chains in the market, as you said. And this is possible to discuss. We need to put this in the table precisely to add value. And I think that here Africa has a huge advantage with the revolution of the transition to renewable energy because of the raw materials that many of the countries have, where the reserves are here. So, you know, we have to think precisely what you did, you know, to think historically what we have done right and where we can do better, do different, to be able to produce with a comparative advantage that we don't have now.
Thank you. I have a simpler explanation. I studied economics at a Western university, and we're still taught it. Innocent minds are told this is a wonderful thing for everybody and everyone benefits from it. When you grow up, you understand that comparative advantage means do as I say, not what I do, which is what most Western economies have done to actually develop over the last 100 years. So this is the way I interpret that. So thank you all very much for these opening remarks, which I think set the stage for a wider discussion on the challenges that we are facing in the context of South-South economic cooperation. We have to change the order of the stage now and allow our esteemed guests to leave. I think they would like to take a photograph of you all before we do change the ordering of the stage. And I should also, before I forget, remind everyone that we have, after the event this evening, we do have dinner in the building here, which you are all welcome to. So once again, please, an applause for the presentations this afternoon.